So continuing the partner showcase, can I hand you over to Torsion? Torsion focus more on permissions and they're an ISV and help fill in some of the gaps that Microsoft don't actually cover. And they work perfectly with our technology, which is why we brought in there to really give you that end-to-end view on how you can actually control your data. And with that, I'll hand over to Torsion.
All right, good morning, everyone. So my name is Peter Bradley. I'm with Torsion Information Security. And first, I'd just like to thank you for this opportunity to show you Torsion this morning. We hope you like what we're going to have to see to show you. So I'd like to start by shining a quick spotlight on the problem that we solve. So before Torsion, I used to be a consultant for about 15 years. I specialized in information management, collaboration, and data security. I worked with hundreds of clients all over the world, and in their information systems such as Microsoft 365, SharePoint, and file shares. And in practically every deployed information system that I ever saw, they all seemed to have this problem. And that is that on day one, when the system is first stood up, the architects have done their job and data access is relatively under control. But once the system had been running for about 6 months or more, who had access to what information, or permissions as it's sometimes called, it's degraded out of control. Right, and the reality is that most organizations using these kinds of dynamic collaboration systems, they have very little visibility or control of who has access to what business information. And when who has access to what, when and why is not under control, then this leads to some significant security and compliance challenges for the organization. So the advice was always the same, that you need to set up a bunch of data governance processes, approvals, regular reviews, cleanups, and you'll need an IT admin tool and assign some IT team members to drive it. Right? There's a bunch of these tools. They all work basically the same way. They're deeply technical tools with technical features for technical people to plow through the gigantic structures of files and folders, people and groups, to push and pull on which objects have permissions where. But this advice, I'd never actually seen it work in practice. Right? My experience was that whether or not a company invests in all of these tools and processes, the problem still happens. Right? Access always gets out of control either way. And so here's a basic assertion for you. If you want to make a good decision about who should have access to a piece of information, what is the security and compliance context around that information, and how should this change over time, you need a close and intimate understanding of the information itself, right? And who has this detailed understanding? Well, it's not the IT guys, right? It's simply not IT's job to understand every piece of business information in every file. So who actually does have that understanding of the information? Well, it's the data owners in the business, right? It's the project managers, the account managers, the line managers. They are the people who understand the information best, and so they are best placed to make the decisions about who should have access to it. Right? The way to solve this problem is to effectively empower the data owners in the business to take responsibility for their own information. But to do that, we have to recognize something. Business users are busy. Right? They are not technical. They are not interested in this stuff. And so to get them to engage, we absolutely cannot require them to think. Right? We can't ask them to be proactive. We cannot ask them for any more than literally 2 seconds of their time. And so instead, Torsion, we keep the business user experience exceptionally simple. Right? Most user interactions are 2 seconds maximum, and then we get out of the way, right? No visible detail. We hide the complexity, and we use intelligent automation to do all of the heavy lifting, right? And this is the way that Torsion works. And let me show it to you. So if I just dismiss my slides there. So hopefully we can see here a pretty plain vanilla SharePoint online team site, and hopefully we all recognize this. We've seen it a million times before. And so possibly you might recognize the couple of changes that Torsion has made to the business user interface compared to what you normally get completely out of the box. Right? So security status critical. So first thing, what is that? So Torsion has put that there. Torsion is a software as a service engine running in the Microsoft Azure cloud. We create a unique and isolated Torsion tenant for every customer, and then we connect your Torsion tenant to your M365 tenant and also to any on-premise file shares you might have, any on-premise SharePoint, any cloud-based file shares you might have. We connect it simultaneously to all of them. And then using that connection, we are constantly monitoring absolutely everything that's going on in your information systems, right? We see every file, we see every folder, team, site, and group. We see every person, every instance of a person having access to an information object, and every instance of a person actually accessing an information object. We see all of that stuff. And then all of that information about your data, we then put it to work with constant deep data analysis and data mining. There are literally hundreds of types of operations running against that information 24/7. They never stop. Now, the types of operations in there are wide and varied. There's machine learning in there, there's algorithms, there's timers. But the point of it all is we're looking for insights. We're looking for the needles in the haystack, what we call the security problems, such as this person has access to that document and it's not okay. Or this site or this OneDrive or this team or this group has been incorrectly configured by somebody and is breaching your data governance policies, or this file has been uploaded to the wrong location. And as a result, the wrong people have access to the information in that file and the file is at risk. So we're constantly looking for all of those kinds of problems. And when we find them, we engage with your business users to help you automatically fix them. Now, security state is critical. That simply means that there are no outstanding security problems in this site right now. The site you can see has also been classified here. So Torsion allows you to apply a comprehensive data access governance policy, which works hand in glove with any MIP or security and compliance center policies that you might have in Office 365, to allow you to define all of the rules and the boundaries for what kinds of access, what kinds of users, what kinds of user behavior are okay or are not okay inside of this SharePoint site. And then finally, the share button. Right, so normally the button at the top right of SharePoint, and by the way, this absolutely very much works and works in the same way in Teams and OneDrive and your other systems as well. But normally that button at the top right there, normally that button says share, right? And we know what happens when you click it. You get a pretty simple dialog box, contains a text box, you type in an email address, press enter, off it goes. That person receives access to whatever that information was. But one of the things that we believe is that sharing experience, as great as it is, because it's so easy for anybody to share anything with anybody else, it's not balanced by any kind of visibility control of data governance. And so what we do at Torsion is we actually come along and we replace that share button with this button here, which we call sharing and security. Now, before I just go into this, so this is Torsion, right, running inside of, in this case, this host SharePoint site. And before I go any further, I just want to reiterate the point that this is not just for SharePoint, right? So this user interface in SharePoint, here it is in Teams, right? Works exactly the same way. We just put a sharing and security tab into every public and every private channel of every team. And also OneDrive, right? So OneDrive is a little unique because even though there is a web-based user interface for OneDrive, the primary UI for OneDrive is, well, you sync your OneDrive offline and then you use it in Windows File Explorer. So with OneDrive, what we've done with Torsion is it's a right-click in Windows File Explorer. See, there's the sharing and security link there. And then here it is, right? So here's the exact same UI, the exact same capabilities, relative to, and it's running here inside of my OneDrive. And so this also works in exactly the same way for any on-premise file shares, any teams that have been synced offline, all of these types of information systems, we provide the same consistent value across all of them. Now, just to have a quick look around some of the things we can see here. So the first thing I'll point out is that this looks like it's part of SharePoint. Right, to your average business user, remember we're focusing on business users, and to your average business user, they're not even going to know that they've just invoked a separate application, right? And that's very, very important. Remember the point I made earlier about simplicity, needing to keep it simple if we want business users to engage. Well, this is part of how we do it, right? Torsion lives where the business users already live. There is no need for them to go and log into some separate application or some separate tool, right, which keeps it simple for them. Now, just have a look around some of the things we can see here. So this site is shared with 28 people. So right away, that's a sense check, right? A business user, imagine you're the head of finance. You can look at that number, 28 people, and go, well, hold on. There's only 5 people who work for me. Why are there 28 people who can access my stuff? That doesn't sound right. Maybe there's some kind of configuration or problem going on there. We can see who has access, can take a look, and maybe we've just found a problem. The next thing is the business owner, right? So Torsion is fundamentally a data governance tool, or data access governance is what the technical name for this space is. And as you'll know, the most fundamental pillar of any data governance plan is ownership, right? Is understanding who owns what, who in the business is responsible for what information. Now, you may already know who owns absolutely every file and team and OneDrive and folder and everything. And if you do, that's great. We can build upon that understanding and really put it to work for you. But if you don't, or if there are some gaps in there, then you don't need to do some complicated consulting exercise with forms and surveys. Torsion can figure it out automatically, right? Because we have that index of the information and the machine learning type operations, we can automatically figure out who owns everything. So we might figure out that we believe that Tobias is the current owner of this finance side. We'll send him a quick notification. Right? Tobias, we think you might be the owner of the finance side. Do you accept that nomination, yes or no? If he says yes, he becomes the owner. That goes to an approval cycle if we needed to. If he says no, we go to the next person down the list. If he's the owner today and 6 months from now we see that he changes roles or something changes about the information, we might send him another notification. Tobias, we think you might no longer be the owner of the finance side. Is that true? He can click a button that says, yeah, you're right, I've actually moved on. No problem, we strip his ownership of that particular site out and the process starts again. So where Torsion begins is we build and maintain a complete and accurate picture of who owns absolutely every piece of information in your entire estate. Now the security status, I touched on that before and I'm going to finish with that. So I'm just going to skip over it for the moment. Now this one here, so ever since COVID and the whole world shifted to a working from home world a few months ago, the number one concern that our clients are coming to us with is help us get control of external sharing. Help us get complete visibility and control of what information is being externally shared outside of the organization by our different staff. And Torsion absolutely nails this problem. Right? So we have a complete understanding of who has access to anything, and then we surface that understanding throughout the application. Right? So we can see here, this particular site, well, it has been shared outside the organization. There is one external person that has access to it. There is that person. We can see, okay, well, who shared it with them and how did that happen? So there we go. So this particular site, access was gained when that person was granted read access into that group. It happened at that time. It was done by that person. So we have complete visibility of that. Also within this site, there are 88 different files that have also been shared externally. So not just the site itself, but there's a whole bunch of stuff underneath it that's also been shared. So we can quickly come in here and say, okay, what's going on, right? Show me everything in this particular site here that has been shared externally. There it is. Now I can click on those, understand what's going on with this particular file, and then we can take action. Okay, so there's 28 people who have access to this information. We know who those people are, and this is them. Now, the first thing that I'll point out about this particular list is that none of the rows in this table say domain group ABC or SharePoint group XYZ, which is what you get with the default out-of-the-box Microsoft stack. And the problem with that is that as soon as you have a domain group called managers who has access to your SharePoint site, the business users, the data owners in the business who are trying to empower, they have no idea who's in the group. They have no idea if there are 10 people or 10,000 people in that group. They have no way of knowing, just a basic question, who has access to my stuff, right? Which means it is very, very difficult for them to actually take any kind of responsibility for data governance or the security and configuration of their own information. Because we can't give them that basic information, it means that empowering them is very, very difficult. So Torsion will unravel whatever kind of complexity you might have going on in your Active Directory and your configuration. We'll unravel all of it and then hide it away because the business users don't care. And we can tell you that these are the unique 28 human beings, including administrators, who have access to this information. Now, anytime that anybody ever has access to anything, we can always tell you this kind of stuff. Right? So access for this person was granted to this information by this person at this time. Because Torsion is watching absolutely everything that's going on, that means we can tell you this kind of stuff. There's a run report button up the top there. So with Torsion, you can run an instant security report on any information object, right? Any file, any folder, any OneDrive, any team, any site, anything, right? And that report, it takes less than 1 second to run. And in that report will be who has access to this information, who gave it to them, and when and how. Also, who has actually accessed this information in the last X days, at what time and from what device. Also, who has access to this information changed over time, right? Who gained access, who lost access, when did that happen, what caused it? What security problems have been found in this information? What is the status of those problems, and what can we do about them? Right, so with Torsion you can run an instant security report on any information object at any time. Now, the next thing I'll draw your attention to is this third column here, reason for access. So anytime that anybody ever has access to anything, Torsion not only understands who has that access, who gave it to them and when, but also why. The business reason why this person has access to that information. We can say, and we're making that reason quite visible here. So Ali has access here because on a temporary basis until this date, because she's covering for Mary while Mary's on maternity leave. Right, and the reason we capture that and make it quite visible there, right? Anybody who has access to the finance information can also see who else has access to it, and can also see the reason why Ali has access to it. And the reason we do that is, well, let's imagine for a moment you're just a regular person who works in the finance team, right? You have nothing in particular to do with data security or compliance, but nonetheless you can see this. Then you can just look over your shoulder and go, well, hold on, Mary's sitting right there. Mary got back from maternity leave last week. Therefore, the reason that Ali has access to the finance information, well, that's no longer true. Perhaps Ali's access to this information is no longer appropriate. Maybe we've just spotted a problem there. Right? That regular business person, they can now just hit a flag button. That's going to kick off a review process. And maybe we've just spotted a problem we can do something about. And then finally, just in the last couple of minutes that we have here, I'd like to show you how our security issue detection works. So as I mentioned earlier, Torsion is watching absolutely everything that's going on in your information systems, and we're looking for problems. Now, when we spot those problems, what we need is a tiny little bit of human validation that that problem is actually a problem. Right? We just need someone to take a look at the problem and say it's okay or no, it's not. And who is the best person to take a look at a particular problem and say, well, this is okay, or actually this is a potential risk? Well, we believe the best person is not the IT guys, right? We do surface the problems here, right? I'm not going to go into this in detail, but I just want to show you that there is an administration console in Torsion, and the administrators can also see all the different types of security issues we're discovering. They can run reports from here, they can fix them from there. But we believe the best person to take a look at a problem and say if it's okay is the data owner who understands the information best. Right? And remember where we began is we automatically figure out who all of the data owners are. That means we now know who to notify. Right? So when we spot a problem with, in this case, this particular this particular finance site, we'll send the data owner a quick notification. We've just found this problem with this information that you're responsible for. Click here to take a look and tell us what you want to do. Now, we've also consolidated a list of all of the problems we've found in this site here, and let's just take a look through some of them. So there's a user, Peter Bradley, who has access to this particular file, but that user is an external user, right? And that's violating our data governance policies that have been set up, right? What external users are not allowed in this configuration to get access to any information that has been labeled as finance sensitive, but nonetheless, there it is, right? So we've just found that problem. Also, this file, it doesn't inherit its security configuration. So that's broken permissions inheritance going on in this particular file. That's violating the governance policy as well. This person here has access. This is an internal user, right? This user has access to the finance side, but nonetheless, he shouldn't have access. Now, by the way that he's gotten that access does not matter. Right? Perhaps he used to work in the finance team, but now he's moved. Perhaps somebody shared him access with the SharePoint iPhone app or something like that. Perhaps an administrator accidentally put the wrong person in the wrong domain group. Right? That kind of thing happens all the time. Right? It's a very, very easy mistake to make. Right? So we're constantly picking up all of these kinds of problems, and we can see there's a bunch of them there. So when we spot these problems, we know who the data owners are. We send them a quick notification, right? Please click here and tell us what you want to do. They click that notification. This is where they come, right? A very quick rundown of the issue. We've decided that this one is, so the severity of this one, so this one's a warning as opposed to error, as opposed to critical. We make that determination dynamically based on a bunch of different things: the sensitivity of the information, the age of the issue, the activity of the information. What is the classification? What's the file involved? A description of the problem. The data owner in the business, they can read a little bit about, why are we asking, how this could have happened and what caused it. But ultimately, all we need the data owner to do is to answer this one simple question: fix it or ignore it. That's it, right? As simple as that. Fix it or ignore it. Now, they can ignore it if they want, That's them telling us that the problem's not really a problem, and that's okay. All right, we'll remove the issue, we'll set the status back to normal. The fact that they have done that will absolutely be very visible in all of the audit histories, all of the reports, but probably 95% of the time these are business users, right? This is already more thinking than they're going to do, right? 95% of the time the experience for them is, oh, there's a problem with my stuff. Okay, fix it. And so we do. They just hit the fix issue button, and then Torsion goes in and fixes whatever that problem was. Now, the way we fix the problem, it depends on what the problem was. See, that's gone now, right? If it was this person has access and they shouldn't, we've just revoked their access. If it was this object, this site, this OneDrive, this team is incorrectly configured and it's breaching your governance policy, we've just corrected the configuration. If it was the file doesn't belong here, we've just quarantined the file. Right? So the way we fix the problem, it depends on what the problem was. But the point is that entire flow from automatically detecting the problem, automatically figuring out who in the business is the right person to tell about it, bringing it to their attention, capturing their instructions, automatically fixing the problem, and keeping track of that entire story end to end from an audit and reporting perspective, that entire story was automatic, right? At no point in that story I just told did I just say the IT guy does something or someone in the business remembers to do something proactive, right? The industry has been trying that centralized approach for 20 years. It hasn't solved the problem. It doesn't work. Instead, by using intelligent automation to completely manage all of your data access governance configurations, right? Using intelligent automation, we've created an approach which not only works on autopilot, but it scales. It doesn't matter how much information you have, doesn't matter how many people you have, doesn't matter how much things are changing, right? Torsion is able to keep access perfectly under control, give you perfect visibility and control of who has access to absolutely anything, ultimately for the purpose of keeping that data secure and helping you breeze through compliance audits and compliance situations.
As always, just blown away by what you guys can do. Just checking, just to remind everyone, this recording will go out to the community group along with the contact details, and obviously not much for a presentation on this one, purely demo, which is fantastic. If you've got any questions, please add them into the chat if you don't want to speak up. If not, please reach out to us or directly to Torsion for any follow-ups as required.